Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Coaches, One Topic. And today I am really excited because I have Bronwyne and Laura joining me today. And it is all about our children and schools and how we can support each other in this little village. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll pass you over to Bronwyne. So Bronwyne can tell you a little bit about herself and where she's dialing in from. Over to you, Bronwyne, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Donna. My name is Bronwyne. I currently am a secondary SENCO, head of inclusion at King's Argosha. But for the last 20, I won't say too many, however, 20 something years, I have been a dyslexia specialist working in that industry, supporting students with an identification of dyslexia. I've been at King's Argosha for about 9 years, working across primary and secondary, supporting students and parents with the students with identified needs, and not only with identified needs, but just students who are struggling, students who are not meeting age-related expectations, etc., etc. Been in Dubai for far too many years to mention, maybe 25 years, on and off, leaving to stay within the Middle East. So that's about me, really. Thanks, Tom.
No, thank you. And actually, I started off pretty much my learning support career with you in King's many years ago, and you were a huge support, a dear friend, and really helped me with my children, but also with my professional development. You above all were the one that really helped me step out my comfort zone and go up to the next level. So I am deeply grateful to you. So thank you, Bronwyne. And Laura, we met virtually and in person a couple of times, and I am so excited to have you here as well. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello everyone, I am Laura Laugier, originally from the Caribbean, so therefore Trinidad and Tobago, so therefore I self-brand as a coconut, and because I left home when I was 18, 20 years ago, I call myself rolling coconut. I am the mother to a little boy called Alexander, and he has a very rare genetic condition called 5p deletion or pre-Duchenne syndrome. And we discovered this in 2019 when he was 1.5 years old. And it has a couple of things that are laid on to that, and we'll discuss that as we go through. But before that, I was in the luxury hospitality space. So I'm a former learning and development specialist, and I was in hospitality, luxury hospitality. So brands like Four Seasons, Roccaforte, Savoy, Kempinski, and my last assignment was with Jumeirah, and that was for about 24 years. And yeah, because of Alexander, I moved from that space in May of last year into this space, which I guess for today's topic is the space of inclusion. I am about, I'd say, 2 years into our journey, because he had joined one of the schools here, and it's a very special class called the Unity class. That's where his the therapy takes place in a school setting at school, themed around the curriculum. So, and because he's done so well there, he was allowed to dip into the mainstream all of last year, and he did so very well. Next week or the week after, he's going into the mainstream full-on, full-time with the learning support assistant. So that's amazing. In terms of Alexander, for many people who don't know what Pré-Duchenne, which in French means cry of a cat, it causes physical and mental delayed development, and there are some complications that can come with it. Last October, we discovered that Alexander has epilepsy. And that's where things got pretty real for me. And then I paid attention to what the neurologist had said a couple of years ago. He said, we can expect autism and ADHD. So we do a lot of checkups and monitoring, and apart from the therapy, to be prepared for any other neurological conditions that can come through. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Thank you for having me, Donna, and it's an honor and privilege to be here with you as well.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and we will go into this a little bit more and talking about, why we're in this space and what our children have actually taught us and helped us grow and become better teachers or facilitators or mentors. Just a quick background on me. I'm a joy and purpose coach. I work with families, parents specifically, and I also run, it's now going to be an international community for coaches to promote ethical and professional and legal coaching globally, which I feel very, very passionate about. So about me. Well, I was in education before for 26 years, and I'm also a single parent, and so this topic is very close to my heart as well. So today's topic is the balancing act, best practices for parent-teacher collaborations. And I couldn't think of two better people to talk to with regards to this topic, because too many times I think there's frustrations from parents looking at the schools at what they're not doing, and the same from schools of what the parents aren't doing. And, there are different aspects that I think we all need to be aware and compassionate about. So let's dig a little bit deeper between you two. What have you gone through to help you in the roles that you're in at the moment? Laura, can I just ask a question? Do you mind muting yourself until you speak? Sorry, I can just hear a background noise.
Sure.
Thank you, sorry. Thank you. Bronwyne, would you like to go first? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, obviously I've been in education for many years. I have 3 children. I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 8-year-old. A couple of years ago, my son was identified with ADHD and dyspraxia, which wasn't a surprise to us, to be honest. And that was the first time it kind of put me on a dual platform, really, where I was a facilitator for inclusion within the school, supporting students with identified need. But then at the same time, I had my son who had an identified need. And now I was expecting things from teachers to happen in the classroom. And I was expecting them to support him and to advocate for him, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that was kind of a new thing for me. It was difficult to switch the two hats, especially with my son being in the same school. And then last year, my daughter, who's 8, she was identified with autism and ADHD. ADHD was not the surprise, because I kind of saw the same things I saw in my son. Autism in girls, obviously very, very different to the experiences I had working with students on the autism spectrum, especially high need students. So it was a learning curve for us as a family, as well as sort of education-wise, to learn about autism in girls, which is so different and presents so many different challenges. So for me, it was a juggling act, and has been a juggling act with the 2 different hats, the parent and the teacher. But it's been invaluable, to be honest, because being able to be on both sides, you kind of understand more about what parents expect from teachers and what parents expect from myself. Because a lot of the time I'm like, oh, I must get so-and-so to make sure that this teacher understands my son's needs. And I think, oh, well, that so-and-so is me, so I have to now go and make sure that my staff are supporting my son and my daughter. So it's been very challenging, but we found a good equilibrium. But I think the experience has been invaluable, because I can see the perspective now from both sides. I know the challenges that come with teachers and having parents who we see as demanding or strong advocates for their children. But in the same breath, I fully understand that, because that's who I want to be. I want to be the one on the front line, making sure that I don't care what teachers think of me. I just want to know, the first and foremost, that my son's getting what he needs in the classroom to be successful. So, it doesn't matter. So I've come to appreciate parents who we previously saw as pushy or demanding or difficult or high maintenance, all those words that come to mind when you're a teacher and you think, oh, this is such a difficult parent. It's not a difficult parent. It's a passionate parent. It's a parent who wants the same things for their child, but they don't have the inside intel that we have of operations of departments, protocols within schools, all that kind of thing. So yeah, that's sort of how I've managed to bring in my personal side of things into enhancing, and I think making me a better facilitator and a better SENCO in order to understand parental needs. So whenever I step into a parent meeting, I step into a parent meeting with a very open mind, and I don't have any preconceived ideas about whether this parent's difficult or whatever, because they're just doing what they need to do to support their child. And I want to be on the same page. I want to do that too. I want to get on board, get on the same roller coaster as them. But I think that's the key, Donna, is making sure that we're on the same ride, that we're not working against each other. And that's very challenging. It's one of the hardest things of the job, actually.
It is very hard and very challenging. And I had this difficulty when I was working in the school with both my sons that were needing additional time and for the teachers to differentiate, and it wasn't happening. So wearing those two hats was very hard. But when I went into a parent-teacher conference, you didn't have Donna, the learning support assistant. You had Donna, the mother, who knew a little bit about what goes on in the school.
That's who you want there. That's who you want at the table, Donna. You want Donna, the mother, because that's who I want to deal with with the parent. I don't want their profession coming to the table. I want them, their understanding as a mother. They know their child best. I want to learn from the parents, so what can we do to support? Your child, you've raised them,
Yeah, and you do that beautifully. You do that beautifully. No, you do. I'm not the sort to blow smoke up anybody. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about your transition with being parent and liaising with the schools.
It's funny that Bronwyne used the word facilitator, because I just saw it in my title, and I think that's where it happened. Mine started with a crisis. After the first year of being in school, the BCBA, who I had trusted to be there, said that she was moving on, and I think my world fell apart. And then I realized that it shouldn't, because I need to be the advocate for my son. I have the most data. I've been with him from the beginning, dealt with all the doctors, and I had realized that I was outsourcing the therapy is one thing, I'm not a therapist, but also the management of his education and the therapy. So that crisis really got me going. And then I've been part of WhatsApp groups. I don't know in other parts of the world, but here in Dubai, they're very, very strong. And the one that I particularly was very active in is a group of mummies of children with autism and ADHD, so neurological conditions. And the conversations in there around school got me really good. I have to sit up and pay attention here. And then I think it was when I started taking Alexander to spaces where you have neurodiverse situations, where there were mainly neurotypical children, and he was the one neurodivergent child, and how it's different. Because in his last class, Unity, he's surrounded by therapists, a circle of care, other children like him. And my approach has always been in business and as a leader. I was a manager for nearly 20 years and a director. And I ran many functions throughout Asia, Middle East, and Africa. Was how can I help you to help me? And I would see many other angry parents go into school, shout at the head of inclusion or at the SENCO or even at the classroom teacher. And I'm thinking, that's not going to get you anywhere. And whenever I connected with the head of inclusion or the classroom teacher, it was always, guys, you're paying for a service. Because let's face it, if I'm paying for someone like Bronwyne, I pay at least 40% more in fees, right, for your services. And it's about what is the value of the service. And if I'm screaming and shouting, and somebody like Bronwyne is just like, oh, into there coming in, I'm not going to get very far, am I? So I approach my relationship with the school the same way that I approach business, the same way, because now I co-own a business with my husband and I'm in a business startup position. How can I get the best, yield the best out of others? Because I look at it as we're all one team, and I pay the school, they're technically my employees. How would I approach an employee who I really want to get the best out of?
Can I just jump in here, because there's 2 points that have been raised. First of all, I think the school needs, or the teachers or the SENCO, whoever's getting shouted at from the parent, is not to take it personally. We don't know what's going on in that family with that person themselves, medically, physically, spiritually, anything. Usually people that go in on the attack are frustrated, are scared, and do not feel heard or supported. And therefore that person on the front line, whilst it's not the right way to go about it, it's the only way that they know how to do it right there and then. So that's where that deep breath and that professionalism has to take place. You let the parent rant, and then you take them to the side, let them calm down and say, right, I'm here for you, I'm listening to you now. And the second point I want to point out is the fact that I know we mentioned this a lot in the UAE, but us paying for that additional service should never, in education, when you're dealing with children, should ever be our main card to say we should be having a better service for our child and support. That's additional, but if you've got a teacher who's looking after your child in the classroom and they're employed as a teacher, they cover all these aspects, and it should be expected and entitled. So I don't know, I'll throw that out to you.
Can I just mention is that, you know, I can understand if you are a parent and you are asking and communicating with the school, with the SENCO, with the teacher, and you're not getting the answers that you're looking for whatever reasons. Maybe the inclusion department is not as set up, or is not even a good or an outstanding inclusion department. Maybe it's a satisfactory according to KTA ratings, etc. Maybe they don't have the infrastructure or the facilities or even the know-how and skills, or even qualified personnel to be running that department. And as a parent, coming to that department expecting certain things from the school and not getting it from the school, not getting the answers you need, not getting the support for whatever reason the school has, can create high levels of frustration, high levels of anger, and then will often result in parents pulling their children from the school and taking them to another school, maybe that has a better reputation. So what does a parent do in that situation? So what do I do when I can't move my child? My child is happy with their friends. I don't want to move them from that school. The SENCO's not listening to me. Nobody's listening to me. So I have no other choice but to get angry and throw the money card and say, you know, this is what I expect from you. So what I would suggest to a parent in that situation is, first of all, take a step back, look at what the school has, look at what skills they have, what infrastructure, and find the right person to speak to, even if that is the person at the top, the principal, or even if it is the learning support assistant that's working with your child, or the doesn't necessarily have to be the person at the top. It has to be somebody who you know is going to listen to you, somebody that understands you. If you can't find that, then obviously then you may not have another choice but to pull your child from that school. But it's all about finding that relationship with the person that maybe knows your child the best, the person that you know or feel is going to get you the answers that you need. And if you still don't get that, then I would not encourage you to walk in and have a face-to-face meeting. Is just put all your concerns down in a professional, polite email and send it to the person at the top to say that this is my journey so far. This is where I'm at on my journey. These are my frustrations. Please, can you understand me? And if you have nobody who will give you an ear, maybe they'll give you the time to read your email. But don't be aggressive. Don't go in there with guns blazing, because when you have a school like that who's not listening, they're not going to listen to you. As you said, Laura, they're not going to listen to you if you go in there angry. Take that step back, get yourself together, put something together that is going to be heard. And then if you still obviously don't get that, then it might be time for you to look for another school if you're not going to be able to get that. There's always a KHDA who is there to support. And, in my experience, KHDA have been very supportive, not only for schools, but for parents as well. And I think the KHDA do want the same thing. They want open communication. They want the child to be supported, which is the main goal. So, I fully understand those frustrations, but there is a way around it. And there is a way of dealing with schools who are challenging and who are difficult. And there's not many of them, but there definitely are out there, schools that don't have a great reputation for inclusion, etc. And just for
but there's also, you can go onto their website, school's website, and have the inclusion policies and procedures, and then you can see, are they, they usually state how they will communicate with the parents, with the child, teachers, and again, that's where you can take that step back, do that reflection. Are they living up to those policies and procedures? If they're not, then again, have your evidence as well and present that to the school, or as you said, KHDA, or any other governing body like Ofsted or what have you around the world. But yeah, can we just get on to, so what were some of your initial challenges as a parent with your child when the diagnosis came through? Because I think that suspecting and getting a diagnosis can be a relief, or it can be, quite saddening. So,
Laura, do you want to?
Yeah, because mine was probably more recent. There's this poem that speaks about thinking you're going to Italy and you actually end up in Holland, right? Comes out of the US. And the metaphor for us is it's crazy, because here I waited so long to have this child. I'm an older mom. I gave birth at 40. And here he pops out. I did everything. I ate well, I exercised, etc. And then, boom, blood test, undeniable. And I'm lucky, by the way. I'm so lucky we had an early diagnosis, right? And that said, there's something called the cougaros curve. I don't know if you're familiar with it, where first, when you have something like this, a big crisis or anything like that happen, you go through a process. So you start with anger, then you go into denial, and you go through this range of emotions before you reach to acceptance. And I think I was in the anger and denial stage for about 2-3 years. I was angry. I said, this is my DNA. How did I do this, etc., etc. And then I started saying, in 3 years of therapy will be okay. And then he turns 4, and he turns 5. And then we're still going. And the older he gets, the more the needs are increasing. Things are escalating. So now I've had to stop and really accept, hey, what are we going to do? Because if this young man, as he grows older, requires care and assistance for the rest of his life, and remember what I just said, I'm 45 with a 5-year-old kid. How are we going to navigate that? So I think it was a bit of a bomb. And then once the dust settles, it's how I choose, or not just me, but my husband as well, the whole family. How do we choose to deal with this? And a lot of parents don't get there. I am meeting parents of 7-8-year-olds who haven't accepted and haven't wanted into the part of my son or my daughter needs therapy. That is just breaking my heart.
Yeah, it is definitely. We, on both levels, even with my my daughter's identification, which is also pretty recent. I expected the ADHD with my daughter. The autism, I had an inkling, but girls mask a lot, and that's exactly what she was doing, because the school wasn't even noticing anything. So I think for me, I was quite lucky, because the identification of autism for our family was a really good thing, because it just answered so many questions. Whereas before, for example, I used to fight with her about what socks to wear, what clothes to wear, what food to eat, and why are you not eating your food? Why are you not doing this? And it was a constant temper tantrums and fighting and arguing and throwing clothes off and not wanting to go to school because the socks are itchy, and et cetera, et cetera. And we never quite understood, but then when, and her also sort of making friends, being a really good leader in games and stuff, but not keeping friends. It's like friends got sick and tired of being bossed around and always, being involved in the directive play, et cetera, et cetera. So we couldn't quite understand that. But when the report came back, it was an aha moment. It was like, okay, now I get it. That's the reason why. And it was small tweaks that we had to make. Ordered socks from the USA, that don't have any seams. Had limited her closet, to only the 3 pairs of shorts she does wear and the 3 t-shirts she's willing to wear. And that was fine with us, don't buy her any more clothes, until she chooses one herself with the right texture and no labels and the fabric's all right, et cetera, et cetera. So it was always, it was an aha moment for us, that it made everything so much more simpler. And we are very open with her as well. We use the word autism every time in the house. It's, oh no, that's your autistic brain. That's the way you think. I think this way, but you think that way. So it was very liberating for us now, because we could talk about it. She could understand it better. We could understand it better. And even with my son as well, but not all parents are there, and not all parents have accepted that. They're on different parts of the journey. And I think that it is a journey, and I don't think there is a destination at all, because parents are going to grieve. They're going to grieve certain things as different milestones come up. And I think it's important for us as teachers and practitioners to fully understand that, is that you may have accepted the student in your class that you say, oh, definitely got dyslexic traits or definitely got autistic traits, but the parent's not there. So, don't mention autism, don't mention dyslexia, don't mention those big bomb words that create panic and fear within parents if the student or the child doesn't have a formal identification. Be considerate, be compassionate, be understanding. Understand that the parent is maybe just starting their journey and is maybe in that anger and defiance stage that you were in, Laura, and that they are not open to hearing anything that you are going to say to them. And they're not going to take their child for an outside assessment. They're not going to take their child for therapy, because there's nothing different about my child, and they're not there yet. So I think it's very important for us as practitioners and facilitators and teachers and SENCOs and stuff to understand that, kindness, just be kind, just be understanding, be compassionate, be the listening ear, if that's all you have to be. You're not going to get that the parent saying, oh yes, no problem, I'll take my child for an educational psychology assessment, no problem, I'll take them for an ADOS or an autism identification, that's fine, I'll do that tomorrow. No, they're not going to want to hear that, because that's what we would want,
So I just ask, because you said something interesting, you're very open with your daughter. How are your children reacting? What is their reaction? How do they deal with it? Because I think a lot of parents don't know when to tell their kids. A lot of parents don't know when to tell the family members around them, especially in the culture we live in. But I'm so curious about the kids. How do they react when you speak to them?
We were actually very lucky. We went to the place that we got Grace assessed. We've had long working relationship with them, even as a SENCO. And she steered me in the direction of research. She said, you make the decision. Read up about early, telling your children early, especially with girls. It's very important for girls that girls understand their autism a lot better because of the anxiety aspect of it. A lot of girls, when they're younger, they don't fully understand how they're thinking. And when they get to teenagers, the anxiety and the depression and the they exclude themselves because they feel that they're different if they don't understand themselves. So I did a lot of research and I read up a lot about the things that Grania had steered me in the line of, and all the research points to the earlier that you can talk about autism and normalize autism, especially for girls, the better. Because now I just say to her, oh, Gracie, that you didn't understand that because you're very literal. So when someone says, oh, bless you, it's not because you sneezed. It's because, it's because, it's like a way of a term of endearer, it's saying, oh, no, that's so sweet. That's so nice of you. And so she can say, oh, okay, I didn't read that well. I didn't understand that because of. So, but, talking about siblings as well, it took a while for her older siblings to fully understand and accept that things are going to be different. And the way in which we deal with my youngest is very different in the way I deal with my 13 and 15-year-old. They also, it's just because, you let her get away with so much, and why doesn't she have to eat the same food as us? It's not fair. Why does she get chicken nuggets for dinner and I have to eat, what everyone else is eating? Why does she get to choose? So it wasn't easy, but the one advice I think I could give to parents in that situation is exactly what I did, is I sent my two oldest to have a consultation with the educational psychologist who identified my daughter. And they had an hour chat with her, and she went through the report with them and said, right, this is why she does this, and this is how you can support her. And also they got to be heard about how they felt about her identification as well. So, and not from the parents, because sometimes they would think, oh, you're not listening to what I'm saying, or you don't understand my perspective. And so it was very difficult for my husband and myself to accept the fact that, maybe they're going to speak more openly to some stranger than they would to us, because it came about that my daughter didn't want to upset me by bringing these things up, because she thought I had enough to deal with, with my daughter's identification, so she could ask those questions to an external practitioner, which is something I wish, and now which I tell a lot of my parents is when you get this identification, send the siblings off as well. When you get that feedback meeting, when you sit in the educational psychologist goes over all the points and goes to the identification, do that for the siblings as well, because it makes such a big difference for them to fully understand and to get on board, because it's a family thing. The whole family's involved, so I think it takes time, but definitely there is a right time. We waited about 3 months before we spoke to her about it, and until we felt that she was ready to fully understand what it was. But there's a great book that says all cats are autistic and all dogs have ADHD. And and my daughter's special interest is cats, so it just fitted in perfectly. We went through the book and I was like, this is like your brain, you think like this. And she was like, oh, I'm like a cat. So it was an easy route for me, but it's not necessarily always an easy route for many families. So I think we were quite lucky and quite blessed that everybody's on board. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
This is a huge strain on your relationships as well. And I think what you tell me, do you think that when you do get that kind of diagnosis, you need to, if you are in a relationship, speak to your partner, both of you get on the same page and deal with your emotions and your grief and your fears and, together before then approaching that discussion with your children and the siblings?
That's a tough one, Donna. I have to say that's a very tough one, especially because my other half does not come from the same culture as I do. It comes from the Arabian culture. And there's so many layers, so many nuances. I found myself becoming more stubborn, more, and if he didn't love me as much as he does, and he didn't hold the space and tolerate a lot of my, the head-butting that we were having, we wouldn't be together today. And I know for a fact it's not the same with others. And when you say deal with it together, once I said, let's go see a counselor. And I was saying, no, we don't need this. And it's taboo. It's stigma. We live in this part of the world, we come from different parts of the world, and we see how things are dealt with at home. And that's why I got into this space as well, because I am related. My son is he's half Arabian and half, I often joke, he's half Pharaoh, half coconut. So I'm in this space, and even in Asia, and I'm half Asian descent. I'm really confused. Yes, I know, but it's incredible, the rich fabric we're living in. So I love that you're offering that, Donna, because we're working on it. We work together every day, but not in the sense of therapy or stuff. He holds space for me. This is a secret to us. When he's up, I calm down. When I'm up, which is most of the time, if I'm honest, he calms down. And I think the beauty of our topic today is the balancing act. And it's beautiful how it's gone from school and collaborations at school to the family, siblings, and now we're talking about spouses and maybe in-laws and even parents, which is amazing. And it's something, Bronwyne, I wrote down a question. Because in 3 weeks' time, going back to school.
Yeah.
And it's your first time as a mainstreamer. And I don't even know who's going to be my Bronwyne when I go back to school. What can I do as a parent at the start of term? I mean, my philosophy is bring her or him flowers and chocolate and curry favor already at the beginning of term. But that's not practical. What is a conversation? Or give me a couple of tips that, approach my SENCO and the classroom teacher so that things are reset. In coaching, we have the discovery called the contracting space when we meet with a client. How can I contract in a very elegant and fruitful way at the beginning of term? So I don't even need to go see the head of year or the head of inclusion or God forbid the principal of the school. How can I do that?
I think it's going to look very different for primary and for secondary. So I'll start with primary. What I suggest you do is send an email if you know who your teacher is going to be, or if you know who your SENCO is going to be, before school starts, or even if you don't know that, then as school starts, just send an email to the SENCO to say, can I meet with you just to discuss the support for my child this year, just so that we're all on the same page, that you fully understand what my child's needs are, and that I can fully understand what your systems, basically what your systems involve, what support you have available, etc., etc. So open the door. If your SENCO hasn't already done that, because to be honest with you, if your SENCO knows who's coming into the school or knows who's in the school already, they should already be opening that door to you to say, right, let's sit down, let's sit around the table and let's talk about what's going to happen this year and how we can work together. So I think if that hasn't happened already, then you take the first step, send the email to the SENCO and first connect with the SENCO, because that's where knowledge disseminates down from the SENCO to teachers, to the heads of year, to et cetera, et cetera. Heads of year, class teachers have other things that they're dealing with at the very beginning of the year. So, and they will get to your child. They will have a look at their class register and they'll see, right, this child has an identification of this, this, and this. And then they'll go on what we call sort of a fact-finding investigation process, where the teacher generally comes to me and says, all right, I have this child in my class. What can you tell me about them? How can I best support them? What documentation do you have on them? Can I read through their reports? And sort of most teachers would do that because they are wanting to know how best to support and to teach your child for the rest of the year. So that is the process that happens, but it doesn't happen at the very beginning of the year. It happens within about the first week of the year. So touch base with the SENCO, first of all. If that has happened and you meet with the SENCO, then I would have a conversation with the teacher, but not at the door of the classroom. Don't do that. Don't walk in the first day, drop off your child and say, oh, by the way, do you know that my child has ADHD? And then don't do that then, because the teacher's not in the space where she can actually pay full attention and listen. If anything, walk to the door and say, how are you? This is so-and-so, is it possible, please, that I can set up a time to meet with you? And then she'll say, drop me an email, whatever. Don't bombard her at the door. And then follow that up maybe the next day with an email that says, can we get together, and do the same thing. It's about starting those relationships, building them in a positive way, making sure that you listen as well as they hear, and vice versa. So, and even if they haven't done that, don't come 3 weeks later down the line and say, well, why haven't you contacted me about my child? You should know my child has ADHD and dyslexia. Why haven't you emailed me to have a meeting? And we get many of those. We get parents who lay dormant and are quiet. And meanwhile, we're carrying on. We are sorting out. We've maybe reached out to parents and said, would you like to meet? Maybe parents haven't picked up the email, and they come back very accusatory. There's beginning of the year is very busy for everyone. And just be mindful as a parent that if the door hasn't been opened for you, then you need to open the door as well. We as SENCOs, I will get to your child. I will make sure that at the start of the year, your child is being supported. But what we tend to do is we work with high need students, making sure that those students, especially with transition, with a new year groups, children coming into schools, are taken care of, and the highest need students are being supported initially. But I have staff that have it on their remit to be looking after those children, just the ones that we're monitoring, just checking in with. And we are doing that. And as parents, you may not know we're doing that because we don't broadcast it, but we are doing that. We are making sure every child is being supported. But play your part as a parent, open the doors if they haven't been opened, ask for the meetings if they haven't been initiated, and then sit down and just be open and honest and work together with the teacher is important. Let the teacher also feel that you are a team player. They don't want to feel like they're fighting against you. They want to feel like you understand their role and they understand your role. So it's a balancing act. It definitely is.
It is, which leads me to my question for Donna. Because as Bronwyne is talking about the teachers, what about the LSAs? Everybody forgets these ladies and gentlemen. How can I help?
I have to say, I have been surprised actually. Now you've mentioned it, right? I'll be diplomatic, but when parents have meetings at the school to do with their child, I think it's very important to have the LSA there at some point as well. Too many times, or both of the schools that I worked at that point, did not invite the LSA in for the meeting. And the SENCOs knew of the children, but wasn't having one-to-ones with them, shadowing them in the classrooms. So the parents would hear and have that meeting with the SENCO. And whilst the information was correct, it would have been better delivered with the LSA there as well, who got to see the little nuances, the little times that they couldn't concentrate, and how we had to differentiate in the class for that particular student. So my one piece of advice would be for any parent who does have a dedicated LSA in the classroom or in a one-to-one setting, if you are having these meetings, invite the LSA to it as well. I don't know, how do you feel about that, Bronwyne?
No, I think it's a definite. I mean, I even have, to be perfectly honest with you, there is no reason why the LSA can't run the meeting. There's no reason why. We have different systems in secondary where we have many LSAs working with one child, because we don't have the one child, one LSA model in secondary, because we do expertise. So we have English LSAs, science LSAs, maths LSAs. So we place an LSA in the classroom who is maths. So not all LSAs can do all secondary subjects. So if I have a year 9 student, maybe my LSA is not good at maths, so they're not going to be able to support us effectively. So we do a very different model in secondary. But if I have an LSA that works predominantly with one particular child, or even if there's 3 LSAs, they're all in the meeting. They have to be, because I don't know how that student is doing science, as you say, Donna, all those nuances, all those little things like, well, yesterday he didn't do very well, and maybe, what can we do? And who's to say that LSA can't contribute to the strategies, to the development, to the next steps for that student? I mean, I would trust my LSA to run that meeting more effectively than I could, because they work with them every single day. They are adults, they are professionals, they are practitioners, they are sometimes mentors, facilitators, best friends, a listening ear. They're the ones who work with those students day in, day out. They know them much better than I could even speak of. So I think it's like you said very early on in this balancing act, is that as a manager, you have to make me better. That's the way I do it as well. Just I may not be able to do it, but I'm going to surround myself in the meeting with people who know better and who can answer the questions from parents and who know the student better. I'm a SENCO. I've got over 200 something students on my register. I don't know every single child in and out, as well as my LSAs. So definitely, Donna, have an LSA there in the meeting, answering questions, giving advice, talking about next steps. And that's also, Laura, what I would encourage you to do is, if you have an LSA now going into the mainstream classroom with your son, is make sure that you insist that LSA is in every meeting that you have. Yeah.
Great. And
definitely.
It's interesting you're saying that, Bronwyne, because my LSA started with us since May, part-time, after school, to build rapport for me to see how she is with him. I was very lucky. She wasn't committed to another family at that point. And then in July and August, she's been with us, because Ali goes to therapy every single day throughout, because he's quite young, remember. So early intervention means a lot of therapy. And she's going into his therapy sessions with him to figure out what is OT, what is physiotherapy, what is speech and language. And we graduated from ABA in June, but she was able to see that a little bit. So now my next question for both of you is, where does the therapy come in? Because Ali will continue to have therapy at school. Okay, maybe not the majority. 80% before was therapy. Now it's going to be 20%. He's going to have occupational and speech and language therapy on the school premises right as he finishes classes. The LSA will go into that. But where does therapy come in? Because I've been accustomed to individual therapy plan meetings combined with individual education plan meetings. And I've been told, now you're going into mainstream, it's slightly different. Can you help me with that?
Bronwyne, can I let you answer that question? But can I just raise a point here with regards to when you were talking about LSA? I think we need to be quite careful as well of the LSA will be getting information from class teachers, from SENCOs, from parents, and sometimes that can be overloading and very overwhelming. There's also, we've got to think about confidentiality. So she may hear things from the child with regards to what's going on at home, what's going on in the classroom with other children, with other teachers. So I think there needs to be a little bit of culture of care for the LSA as well, with regards to the amount of information they're getting and who can they offload to. So I think parents need to be careful of how much they do share with regards to their frustrations, because sometimes they're too open and too relaxed and informal with the LSA that they wouldn't say necessarily to a teacher or to a SENCO. And the same with the teachers' SENCOs to the LSA. So they can be piggy in the middle here. So I think, that needs to be addressed as well, because when I was an LSA, I took that home with me. I cared deeply about my students. All of them knew. They used to call me, Mrs. Burfield's kids. So I think that needs to just be addressed as well. So sorry.
I agree with you there, Donna. Yeah, and I think it's important, that comes in the role of the SENCO, is the SENCO to make sure that you check in with LSAs on a regular basis, to make sure that there is, we run a tracking and recording system. So if any of those things are are shared, we track and we monitor that as well. So it doesn't all fall on the LSA. And also we have teams, we sort of have maths team, science team as well. So within our LSA body, we have supporting teams as well. So but I do definitely agree with you, Donna, there. It's definitely not, and definitely in my department, it's not an isolated position. It's not that they feel isolated. Generally, we have maybe 4 LSAs working with one child. So there is that sort of open communication between LSAs and support. But to come back to your question, Laura, I have to use the word, it's critical and it's imperative that SENCOs, teachers, and even LSAs meet regularly with external therapists. If your child is still going to occupational therapy or speech and language outside of school, there are a lot of things that the LSA can do in school to model and generalize those skills that the student is learning or developing within occupational therapy, speech, and even if it is clinical psychology or therapy, play therapy, whatever it is that the student is experiencing outside, it's important. And to be honest, we've met with fantastic practitioners. They're always willing to meet with the school. Speech and language, OT, psychologists, they are very open and very willing to set up Zoom meetings or Teams meetings, whatever it is, to communicate and to make sure that the school is on board, because that ensures the student's progress and makes sure that the student is developing those skills that the therapists and their parents are paying so much money for, and that therapists are working so hard to instill. So definitely, I would say at least 1 meeting per term with external therapists, at least, unless therapy changes or unless there's any sort of milestones that either have been met or there's critical issues that need to be dealt with. But at least once per term, where you have a team around the child meeting, where you have therapists, LSAs, SENCOs, parents, teacher at the meeting, at least, where you can be talking. And I think those do tend to happen during the IEP meetings or behavior plan meetings. But if they're not happening, as parents, make sure that they are happening. Speak to the external therapist to make sure that they're happy to communicate. I wouldn't do it in an email. I wouldn't do it with the therapist meeting separately with the teacher without the parent there. As a parent, make sure you're at those meetings so that you know what is being said, you know what information is being shared, and that you can contribute your part to that as well. Because as a parent, you know your child best. Better than a therapist, better than a teacher, better than a SENCO. So make sure that you're there and also that you know what's going on. Keep yourself in the loop. I wouldn't leave it just to the school to deal with. And we do get parents like that. They say, well, here we go. Don't worry, you meet with them. Whatever you decide, you decide. And I think it's important to make sure that the parent is there at those meetings.
Guys, look, we've got about 10 minutes left and we could go on and on and on. But I really want to ask one question before we do go. When do we introduce the children into these discussions? At what age? Should they be there at the IEP meetings? Should they be at the termly meetings? Should they be there with the therapist meet? So especially, there's a difference with secondary and primary, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, I think it's a case by case. There are some teenagers that I work with that are not ready to be there. They're not ready to be at that meeting. They're not ready to understand. I have some parents who don't want their children knowing their identification. And this is in years 11, 12, 13. The students still don't. And until the child is 18, we have to respect the parents' wishes that the identification is not shared with the student. So definitely a case by case. But I would say generally, from about year 5. From about year 5 is where we encourage the students to be at those IEP meetings. I wouldn't say meetings where we're discussing bigger picture kind of things, where we're talking about support, level of support, maybe if it's service agreements. The students don't need to be worrying about that. But when it comes down to target setting, strategies in the classroom, I think from about year 5, and that would be grade 4 in an American system. I would think then the student can contribute, but definitely case by case. If the parent feels the child is ready to be at that meeting and to be able to contribute to strategies. even if the student is not there, we at Barsha, we have a thing called a student voice, where we sit down with our students right from year 7, and we say, right, what do you want your teachers to know? Tell me what you want your teachers to do for you. Anything, just tell me. Even if it's off the wall, just tell me what it is. And we just record down all their ideas. And then what we do is we go away and we summarize that into what we feel are good classroom strategies. And we set them down as non-negotiables. So those that every teacher will get 3 non-negotiables. These are non-negotiables. So if I, as a SENCO, if I walk into your class as a teacher, and this student XYZ is in your class, and that student's 3 non-negotiables are not taken care of, then I will have something to say. And these are not unrealistic non-negotiables. These are simple, easy strategies that make life easier for the child in your class. So I think it's important that student voice is heard, but I would leave it up to the parent as to decide when and where and at what age, to be honest.
100%. 100%. I'll be very honest. I don't know when Ali's expressive language will come well enough to do that. Fortunately or unfortunately, I can see the receptive language is very much there. He's proving to be quite intelligent, quite emotionally and socially intelligent from the actions we're seeing. And he's partially verbal as well. So 100% agree with you, Bronwyne. It depends on the child. But also it's us as parents to make that decision. It's not up to us necessarily to leave it 100% to the child, because reality, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, they're going to have to grow up into the big wide world, especially when we're not around anymore, and learn to show up and present themselves in a way that they're comfortable. Right, and as you were saying earlier, this earlier research shows that the earlier we do that, we bite the bullet and do it, you know, the easier it is for us to influence that learning curve. So, agree.
Yeah. Oh, listen, ladies, thank you both so much. Bronwyne, I think I'm going to have to steal more information from you for another 3 coaches, 1 topic. I really appreciate both of you sharing and being open and vulnerable as well, because it is difficult when we're talking about our children, and then when we do work in education as well, because we care about the children that we're looking after there. And it is, you know, it's not only a professional investment, it's an emotional investment. So on that note, I would just like to say thank you both very, very much. And if anybody watching this would like to know more, I will be sharing this on my LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And I will be tagging Bronwyne and Laura there as well. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the comment section and we will get back to you. So on that note, thank you very much, and everybody have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Laura.